What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. Chance and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and a familiar friend and face on the show, Anthony Cosenza from the Bengals Orange and Black Insider Podcast. Also writes for SB Nation, does a lot of things, and we'll make sure he gives you guys an opportunity to let you know what he's working on, where you can find it. But Anthony, thank you so much for coming on tonight as our resident Bengals expert. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, guys. The holidays are coming up, and I actually got a round of golf in for the first time in like 6 months today. So feel pretty good about things, man. And of course, we've got a big, we got a big game coming up here Sunday. So
sounds like the life of a Bengals fan.
I guess, man. Yeah, just golf, and I'm living the life, right? Yeah.
Man, I didn't get any golf in this year, Anthony. So I'm jealous right off the jump. Man, it's been a long time, but maybe I'll catch a warm day coming up here. But yeah, this is a big one. I mean, this is, we must win gets thrown around a lot, but man, this is about a bigger game. When you look at it's certainly from the Ravens standpoint, when you look at their division record right now, the way they've been sliding down this, last few game stretch, this is definitely the Ravens' biggest game of the season. And so the first place I want to start is when I look at the Ravens, the biggest issue plaguing the Ravens, not just their injuries, but the COVID situation. So what is the current COVID status for the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, as I said, admittedly, I was kind of stepping away from news a little bit today. I actually had a little bit of a me day. I know, so selfish of me. But right now, it really kind of looks, based on what I've kind of been hearing, Chidobe Awuzie, starting corner. He was out last week with coronavirus, and it looks like he's still dealing with it. I think you guys had mentioned before we went on the air here, a couple of Ravens guys have been were on the list last week, and then it's kind of lingering into this week as well. So thankfully, it doesn't seem to be hitting the Bengals as hard as the Baltimore Ravens. However, the Bengals have, for the most part of the season, the bigger part of the season, they've been really healthy injury-wise. And really since the last 2-3 weeks, the injuries have started piling up a little bit. Now, thankfully, it's not severe, but, they're getting really thin at linebacker. They're getting they've had a couple of guys in and out on offense. Joe Mixon has an ankle issue. He hurt that last week. So, there's a couple of injuries that are starting to pile up a little bit when this team was one of the healthier ones in the leagues earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've mentioned that before because we feel like the Bengals for a long time have been the healthiest. And I think they still are probably in the division, but certainly it is a battle of attrition. It is every year, but I feel like this year more than ever between the injuries and COVID, with Omicron coming on and it hitting late at the end of the season, it's been a real battle of attrition like we've never seen before. I think that's fair to say. But this is my question. I sometimes I get a little too deep in Twitter. It's a problem of mine. I'm working on it. I'll openly admit it.
Yeah.
Eli Apple has a way of stepping in dog crap. Something like I've never seen before, right? Like especially for a guy who's at least outside looking in, he's a role player, right? Like
he's an underperformer.
I don't think he's making a Pro Bowl. Like he's got his role, he does his job, but like he's not filling the stat sheet. I don't think he's making a Pro Bowl. This, that, and the other. So, do fans ever get is there any uprising in Cincinnati that he would keep his mouth shut and not give the Ravens bulletin board material? Do they not pay attention to that? Because I think of if I was on the other side, I'd be like, dude, can you stop right now? Can you just not say the things that you say? Any of that narrative going on?
I'm going to say this about Eli Apple. Beginning of the year, he was one of the biggest scapegoats on the team because even though the team was winning and playing well, that defense was playing pretty outstanding football, and he was kind of the lone guy that was standing out in a negative way. Since the middle of the season and into this season, and now granted also with Eli Apple, if you know what's going on with the Bengals cornerback situation, he has been pressed into a starting boundary corner role when he was really pegged as CB4, CB5 on this roster because Trey Waynes has been out for most of the year. He was going to be the guy that was going to be the starter. They paid a lot of money for him last offseason in free agency. They brought in Awuzie. Awuzie has been awesome on the other boundary corner there. As I mentioned, he was out last week with COVID. I don't know what's going to happen this week here, but so Eli Apple on the field has been pressed into a role wherein that was not envisioned for him. He was going to be a depth guy, and that was it. Didn't play well at the beginning of the year. Slowly has played better and better and better throughout the rest of the year. Now, to your point, James, not a Pro Bowl player, and to Glenn's point, an underachiever. He was a former 13th overall pick, something like that. Mm-hmm. Has never lived up to that potential wherever he's been. But I would argue he is playing the best football right now of his professional career for the Bengals, and thankfully it's for the Bengals. But I do understand, though, at some point, maybe keep things a little low key till you got things truly in hand. But guys talk. It's an emotional game, and they say and do things that sometimes you go, I don't know if that's the best idea right now. I don't. As far as the fan base, I don't think anyone's saying, "Hey, Eli, keep it quiet." But at the same time, when you put that stuff out there, if your walk doesn't back up your talk, that's people, as they say on Twitter, keep receipts, right, James? I mean, that's what happens. So I mean, if he's gonna put that stuff out there, I know there was a clip where he was, I think it was after the first Ravens game, where he was saying big trust and huge trust, massive. He's putting out that stuff, and he kind of had some things about Jerry Jeudy's lackluster performance last week, and he was largely in coverage for him, and he put that out there. He's a talker. I mean, that's kind of who he is, and you just got to hope that if you're on the Bengals side that he backs it up, and he wasn't backing it up early in the season, is backing it up now. And I think he's starting to maybe feel that he's playing some of his best football, and maybe that's why he's putting it out there.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, hey, like you said, if you can back it up, then talk your stuff. Now to me, the big worry heading into this week was, of course, the harassment that Lamar was facing in the last matchup. I mean, absolutely under duress the entire game. Hendrickson, Hubbard, I mean, we're in the backfield seemingly more than the Ravens running backs were. And it was unbelievable to watch. And now with a hobbled Lamar, questionable whether he's going to play or not. Got a lot of issues up front, COVID and injury related on the offensive line for the Ravens. So what is it? Is the front relatively healthy when it comes to Hendrickson, Hubbard, Ogunjobi? Are all those guys going to be coming and ready to go?
Yes, as of now. And guys,
that's what I wanted to hear.
Well, I know. I got to tell you, I was talking with my nephew, who's a Bengals guy also, and he just says, "Hey, Anthony, do you know how many sacks Ogunjobi has on the year?" And I was like, I think he's got like 4 or 5, just top of my mind, right? I'm like, I know he's had a pretty good season. He has 7 as a rotational defensive, interior defensive lineman. DJ Reader, big nose tackle. He's had a couple of sacks. He's playing very well, particularly against the run. And then you've got a guy, BJ Hill, who has been an absolute steal of a trade. The Bengals traded away Billy Price, who was a disappointing first-round center that they picked back in 2018. They traded him at the final cut deadline there to the Giants for BJ Hill. BJ Hill's come in and been a great role player too. So I know Hendrickson and Hubbard. Hubbard's playing the best football of his career, in my opinion. Hendrickson's been outstanding. The interior of the defensive line, though, has really been a very, very key piece to that defense. And, as long as those guys kind of stay healthy, I think they've got a good shot at, continuing to make some waves in the division and potentially a push into the postseason, because I think that was always the plan. But unfortunately, other injuries, free agency failures, etc., have not provided the depth. And this year they've just got the depth, and they've kind of hit the lucky side of the coin, if you will, on the injury front and the defensive line. So Hendrickson's been an outstanding signing, though. I mean, he's got a sack, or at least a half sack, in 10 straight games. He's one of the sack leaders in the NFL and one of the pressures leaders in the NFL. Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if you remember, I think everybody was kind of celebrating outside of Bengaldom about Carl Lawson not re-signing with the team, right? Talented guy.
And then
they bring in this guy. Yeah, he goes and gets hurt. And then a lot of people are like, oh, this guy, all he does is just have cleanup sacks. He can't generate pressure. And then he comes in and he's been one of the best edge players in the league this year. So,
what's Logan Wilson looking like? I see he's doubtful. Is that really doubtful, or is it? What's Logan looking like?
I would not expect him to play this week.
Wow, big loss. Okay.
Yeah, I would not expect him to play this week. He had an injury, I believe it was against the Chargers a few weeks ago. Of all things, because they started to get thin at linebacker, he was in on a special teams play, and it sounded like there was a shoulder dislocation separation issue. And thankfully it wasn't an IR thing or a season ender. So that means there wasn't, extensive damage. It was just more kind of rest and let it heal type of thing. But yeah, usually if you're doubtful, especially kind of midweek, late week for the Bengals, you're probably not going to play. And I think Zach Taylor has basically more or less kind of said, probably not Logan Wilson this week. That'll probably happen a little bit down the road there. So they're thin at linebacker. That's a big loss. However, one guy's been stepping up and playing pretty well, and Jermaine Pratt, third-year guy, he's been playing pretty well of late.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, I feel like it's a theme in the NFL this year, and none of us know better here than the Ravens. A lot of teams have been so hot and cold, up and down. Of course, you guys come in and you put the absolute beat down on us, and then turn around and I think it was the game after that, right? They lost to the Jets, right? And it's kind of, I feel like, been this for a lot of teams. What do you attribute that to when it comes to the Bengals, like the up and down nature of some of their games? I feel like I said, in some games they're top notch, everything just lines up, and they look like a really hard football team to beat. In other games, you're scratching your head like, okay, what's going on here? What do you see some attributing factors to that?
That's a great question, and I think there's unfortunately kind of like different answers depending on the week and all kinds of different things. I think you guys know that when this team is healthy and when they have a solid game plan in place and when they execute, they're good. The problem is their lack of consistency, and I think that comes with youth. If you look at Jamar Chase, first handful of 7-8 games of the year, absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, a little bit. Not only has there been a bracketing of coverage to him since really the first go around with the Ravens, but there's also been some drop bobble issues again that you look back at the summer and go, oh, there's that, because there wasn't a problem with it at the beginning of the year, and now it's kind of creeping up a little bit. Last week, just 1 catch, 3 yards against Denver. But they've also had T. Higgins step up here and there, and Tyler Boyd had a nice game last week. So I mean, they've got other weapons, but teams are adjusting to what they are doing, I think, is part of it. I think they are a young team, and they're still trying to figure things out. They're young at the quarterback spot. They're young at the wide receiver spots. They're young at a lot of different spots on the team, and with that just comes a lot of consistency issues. The coaching staff is still, they're in that critical third year, but I mean, they're all pretty young guys, and when they all took their posts, meaning the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and head coach back in 2019, they never held those positions at the NFL level before. So I think they're still kind of battling through some consistency issues, and I think just sometimes, as you guys know, there's a team that you just don't match up well against. And, I think for the Bengals specifically, I don't think San Francisco's a good matchup for them and personnel wise and what they like to do. I don't think Cleveland, they can't figure out a way to beat the Cleveland Browns.
No, Baker Mayfield just comes out of his shell only 2 times a year.
It's unbelievable. So, I mean, there are just a couple of teams that just, you just don't match up well against. And then, of course, there's the old cliche potentially of learning how to win as a young team, right? And how to handle success as a young team. And maybe that plays into it too, but there's a myriad of factors. And I also think that really, truly, I don't know, especially in the AFC, who's really, really good. I think there are teams that can be good and have shown they can be good on certain weeks, but you guys know, it's a lot of this in the conference.
Everywhere, not just in this conference. I mean, you look at what Arizona got destroyed by Detroit, and then Green Bay. They come in to play a Baltimore team that is so decimated. I mean, their secondary, our best corner was Chris Westry. And then, it was a pretty steep drop from. So it's like, and they very well could have lost that game if we convert the 2-point conversion. So when you look at this Ravens team, they're a bit of a slide here, but they've lost these last 3 games by a total of just 4 points. So, when you look at this team, how beat up they are, and the fact that Lamar might not go, what are your thoughts going into this particular game as far as who do you give the edge to? Because I was surprised to see the Bengals are only a 2.5-point favorite, despite being the home team, which typically gives you 3. So odds makers seem to be kind of torn here. So what's your thoughts in this specific matchup?
Well, it would not surprise me if whichever team won, quite honestly. I see, I see a decimated roster for Baltimore on a number of different fronts, but I also see a team that I've watched for a very long time and followed for a very long time that is incredibly well run as an organization. They do, even though depth has been tested incredibly hard for the Ravens this year. I mean, they seem to still have that next man up mentality, and they are a good team at times that I can see when their backs are against the wall. It's kind of the Steelers, same deal, right? I mean, the Steelers, I keep making a joke that it's the Undertaker GIF, right? I mean, you think they're dead and they just keep popping out of the coffin, right? And you're like, dude, can you guys just go away? And so, this one, it really would not surprise me. I think the Bengals have an upper hand because of the roster situation with the Ravens, and Bengals, coming off a win, maybe starting to get that momentum back after a couple of bad losses. But like I said, the emotion factor and just the desperation mode that the Ravens could employ this week, that worries me a little bit. And I think that the line that you mentioned, Glenn, the betting line there, that's kind of indicative maybe of how people are having a difficult time calling this one, right? And the Bengals also have not been great at home this year. They're better on the road this year, surprisingly, than they are at home. So whatever that means, maybe that's playing into that formula too.
Yeah, that is interesting. So Anthony, I want you to reach deep into your closet and find some Ravens gear that you got hidden back there somewhere. No, I'm totally kidding. The reason I want you to do that is because if you're the Baltimore Ravens, we're in a bit of a conundrum right now. The fan base is splitting down the middle because a lot of people want Tyler Huntley to play this game. He came off of a great game against Green Bay. He's healthy, right? He'll have a whole week of practice going into this game. Other people are saying, and I'm one of these people, if Lamar Jackson can go, I don't care if he doesn't practice all week. I want 8 under center. Where do you lie? Like if you're on the side of the Ravens, what do you think strategically would be the smartest thing to do?
Well, as of Wednesday, I don't think Lamar Jackson practiced. So that's an issue there. It all depends on how that injury is, around game time. If I'm the Baltimore Ravens, and of course I'm going to sound like stereotypical Bengals guy here, and but I would stick with Tyler Huntley right now because not only kind of a hot hand, but like you said, Lamar Jackson still might not. I don't know that 80%, 85%, 70%, whatever Lamar's at, I don't know if that's truly better than how Tyler Huntley is playing right now, especially what we saw last week. And maybe that just makes me sound like a total ridiculous guy by saying that. But the other issue that I'm looking at it with, knowing the Bengals, they have traditionally had a tough time game planning for quarterbacks that have limited film or that they have not prepared for truly during the week. You can go last week to the Denver Broncos. They prepped all week for Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater goes out in the third quarter. Drew Lock comes in, and Drew Lock's winging the ball a little bit around the field, throws a touchdown pass, has a wacky turnover late, but Drew Lock had him in position to win that game, really. And I think that the defensive adjustment late in the game there is a problem. And so, the Bengals have had experience and have been beaten badly by Lamar Jackson in the past. So maybe they're starting to, at least based on last go around, they're catching up a little bit. And so maybe this is an opportunity, if Lamar Jackson is not 100% healthy, that they go with Tyler Huntley. And that's the guy that may end up getting you a win here. I don't know.
Yeah.
I may sound like I said, I may sound like an idiot Bengals guy. And of
Glenn's,
course the Bengals guy is going to say to sit Lamar, but
no. But I think
agree with you. I've said that, and that's why I get beat up. I would rather a fully practiced Tyler Huntley go than Lamar with no practice. Now, if you're telling me Lamar can at least practice in a limited fashion all week, then it's a different story. But if he can't, knowing that even if they win this game, so let's say they win this game with Tyler Huntley, there's more games. This isn't the last game of the season. So I'd rather not risk the possibility of a further injury with Lamar. Let's stick with Tyler. The offense wasn't the reason they lost. I mean, they didn't get the 2-point conversion. That certainly would have helped. But he had 4 touchdowns and no turnovers and 270 some yards of offense, by himself. So he's not the reason they lost that game. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was the reason they lost that game, and the fact that the decimated secondary.
Yeah, we had the water boys playing corner.
Yeah, I mean, we had guys literally. I had no idea who they were, and all I do is talk Ravens football, and I had no idea who they were. So what's that tell you about?
We had no one successfully respond to our tweet for $5 if they could name the corners that rotated in the first half. Not a single person got it correct. They were naming safeties and former Ravens, and Chris McAllister came up, and I'm like,
nobody knew. So yeah, I agree with you. Now I'm probably going to get beat up just for saying that anyway, but that's for another time. But one last question I have, you touched on it briefly earlier, but how much weight do you put into the fact that the Ravens have a history of winning this division, have a history of going to the playoffs, have a coach who's been in scenarios like this, and the Bengals really do not? Maybe they have some ancillary players, but their main core of guys and their coach doesn't have a track record of leading a team to a division title and into the playoffs. So do you think, knowing what's at stake in this game, do you think that those outside pressures do anything to hurt a younger, inexperienced Bengals team?
Potentially. You look back, the Bengals had that nice run from 2011 to 2015 where they had the 5 straight postseasons and a couple of division titles in there. But basically none of those guys, coaching staff or otherwise, I mean, there's maybe a couple from 2015 that are still here. And I think it's coaching staff only. I'm thinking the special teams coordinator. So, I mean, basically it was a clean house deal after Marvin Lewis left. And so, yes, that's what they wanted. They wanted to get people from winning football teams. You got Taylor from the Rams and, all this kind of stuff. You wanted players at the college level and stars at the college level to come in at winning programs, national champions, et cetera, to bring that mindset to the Bengals. And so, and obviously there's no one really that personifies that more than Joe Burrow. So I think that's kind of all part of the plan. This is the stepping stone game. This is the stepping stone season. I didn't really let me go back a second. I felt like where the Bengals are at right now was on the high end of my expectation range for this team. I felt 500-ish, maybe a little bit more in it towards the end of the season. Maybe they don't make it, et cetera. And now, they're in the lead, but it's a logjam in the division. So, like I said, this is kind of a stepping stone game for them in terms of being able to say, hey, we're with the big boys here in the division. Hey, we swept Pittsburgh, we swept Baltimore, if that's what occurs Sunday. And, we're charging towards the playoffs earlier than a lot of people expected. I do still, and I say this very sincerely, I immensely respect how the Baltimore Ravens run their franchise, how they build their teams. I have a lot of respect for John Harbaugh. I know he's caught a lot of hell for those 2-point conversion calls and all kinds of stuff that didn't work out. So yeah, I mean, I in a lot of ways, that's kind of what makes them the favorite in this team is the experience. We've been there. We have the track record, being the Baltimore Ravens, and the Bengals do not. So this is kind of one of those maturation games for the Bengals, and it'll tell a lot as to how far they have come in a short period of time.
God dang it.
All I'm thinking of is the future, because I'm looking at daggone Jamar Chase. He ain't going nowhere. Burrow ain't going no daggone where. Joe Mixon's still only 25 daggone years old. And even Ozuma. I mean, where the hell? This guy comes out of nowhere. We got a pretty damn good tight end in Baltimore, obviously. But Uzoma might, like John said today, he might be the most underrated tight end in all of football. I guarantee half the football fans don't even know who this guy is. Meanwhile, he's an absolute monster to take down in the open field. Anyway, this is a team that's built for certainly the long run. This isn't a team that I think is just going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Just we got some guys coming back next year, Glenn. So don't you worry. Don't you get too nervous. Hey, I can walk you back off that ledge.
Okay. But, the encouraging, just quickly, the encouraging thing from the Bengals side of things is Joe Burrow's on his rookie contract as a quarterback. So that gives you, as you guys know, with Lamar, that gives you a little extra space that a lot of teams don't have in terms of salary cap, free agency moves, and all that kind of stuff. So the Bengals are hopefully positioning themselves over the next year or two as well to do more in free agency because they have that cap flexibility like you guys have seen in Baltimore because of Lamar's rookie deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just keep them off the IR because that's where all our cap is right now.
Oh God, I know. Yeah.
But so I gotta ask you this, Anthony. You kind of mentioned you talked a little about how you're feeling about this game, but what is it if you had to name 1 or 2 keys the Bengals need to come in here and do to get this win? What is it they need to do? And then how do you see this game eventually playing out?
Mark Andrews. Cover him at all costs. The Bengals have issues and have traditionally had issues with really good tight ends. They had Fant and Albert O. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name for the Broncos. Those guys combined for a pretty decent amount of production. I think over 100 yards there. Kittle killed them a couple of weeks ago. And so Mark Andrews, they largely bottled him up the first time around, and that was a nice surprise. But if you don't have Logan Wilson out there, you don't have Akeem Davis Gaither, another athletic linebacker that they used in pass coverage the first time around. You may not have a Wouzier out there. So, I mean, your secondary and your back levels of the defense, your pass defense is a little suspect, at least a little more suspect than it has been potentially. So cover Mark Andrews, however that needs to occur. That has to be part of the game plan for the Bengals. And, I think they have to be prepared to see either quarterback. And I think, a little bit playing into the Bengals corner is, Huntley and Jackson kind of are of the same mold. They're mobile. They can run, they can throw, they can do, so it's not like you're facing two completely different styled quarterbacks and you have to have two different defensive game plans. But even so, you got to be ready to face either guy. So to me, I think this is a little bit more a defensive type of mindset for me in terms of what's important this week. I know there's Chase and Burrow and all these guys in the depleted secondary and the Baltimore Ravens side of things. I think they'll make some plays. They'll put up points there. I'm not as worried about that. It's more a little bit defensive matchups that I worry about. And of course, also the hits and the sacks that Burrow takes weekly. The offensive line for the Bengals is still, it's better, but that's like, I mean, what are we actually talking about by saying better there? It's like, it's marginally better than it has been, but still is a work in progress. But those are a couple areas I'm thinking of.
Gotcha. Right. So what's the prediction? Who wins?
Like I said before, and I guess I'm being diplomatic by saying that, I really truly would not surprise me if either team won, especially, I mean, when do you see a Ravens team lose 4 in a row, right? I mean, it doesn't happen. Yeah. Even with the injuries, it doesn't happen. But I will go with the Bengals. They're at home. They're healthier at this point in time. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the blowout that we saw the first time. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I would say maybe something in the ballpark of, 26-21, 26-20, some 24-20, something like that. Justin Tucker is going to get his. This, as weird as it sounds, this is like, if you're a special teams nerd or if you're a kicker nerd, these are like 2 really good kickers that are in this game. And the Bengals hope that they've got a guy even close to Justin Tucker and Evan McPherson. He hit 2 50-yarders, set a franchise record last week. So if you like kickers, this is probably the game for you. But I think it'll be pretty close either way. Would not surprise me if the Ravens pull this one out. But I do think just because the Bengals are in a little bit of a better roster situation health-wise, that they've got a little bit of an edge here.
Nice. Well, Anthony, we always appreciate it. It is going to be a nail biter for sure. I think I agree with you there. Anybody that's been watching the Ravens this season knows that heart pills are required in every game. So, blood thinners, you got to take your baby aspirin before the game, everything else.
Bayer.
That's right. But Anthony, why don't you let the folks know where they can find you, what you're working on, things of that nature.
Yeah, CincyJungle.com is the website. That is the Bengals blog through the SB Nation network. So like for the Ravens, there's Baltimore Beatdown. That's like the SB Nation site for Ravens too. So you can go check that one out. I don't write there, but Raven stuff, you can go there. I'm on the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. I'm one of the hosts there. You guys have been generous enough to give some time on that, and we've had a great time. And I do a couple other podcasts here and there, but that's kind of the main stuff. I'm on Twitter at CJAnthonyCUI, so you can follow me and be annoyed, I'm sure. So, but hey, thank you guys for inviting me back on. It's always fun talking with you guys. I love chatting with you. So
absolutely,
just appreciate the invite back.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. And if you're a Bengals fan watching this and you are not following the Orange and Black Insider and Anthony personally, you're making a huge mistake. He's the best in the business. So thanks again, Anthony. Appreciate you coming on. As always, have a great Christmas, and we'll talk soon.